Technically, we didn't invite the war criminals to our new planet. They just landed while we were busy naming the local rocks. 6 months ago, Commander Briggs was thrown out of the Terran forces in a trial that felt more like a political circus than a court-martial. Accused of inappropriate aggression during peacekeeping, he'd taken full responsibility for defending his squad during a botched negotiation on Zentarev, where peace had been about as realistic as teaching a grenade to bake cookies. The verdict came fast. No appeals, no ceremony, just one-way transit to a dead rock orbiting a dying star. He stepped off the drop shuttle alone, armed with a shovel and an atmospheric scanner that beeped twice before dying for good. The planet had no name, no breathable air, no signs of intelligent life, just endless plains of cracked volcanic rock and winds sharp enough to slice skin. Officially, it was marked inhospitable and unremarkable. To Briggs, it was perfect. He wasn't dead weight even if Earth had treated him like garbage tossed into the void. With nothing else to do, Briggs built. He scavenged the drop shuttle, fashioned a crude habitat, and by month 2, he'd carved out a bunker with pressurized walls, an airlock, and a solar array jury-rigged from his helmet's visor and some salvaged drone parts. He named it Fort Stubborn, not for himself but for the insult that got him into the court-martial transcript. Then the others arrived. The shuttle came in hot, half-burnt, leaking fuel, and clearly not built for landing on anything harder than a marshmallow. It belly-flopped into a crater 2 kilometers west of Fort Stubborn, throwing up enough dust to blot out the sun. Briggs stared at the plume, scratched his beard, and muttered, "Well, that's new." Out stumbled 5 men, all ex-military, all dumped here for reasons nobody would speak aloud. One had detonated a pirate convoy without waiting for authorization. Another had overridden retreat orders during a colony defense and saved 300 civilians while disobeying direct command. Each had been punished not for failure, but for success that embarrassed the wrong people. By month 3, there were 12 of them. They never asked Briggs for leadership. They just followed. He didn't give speeches. He gave jobs. You weld that hull fragment. You help dig the perimeter trench. You stop complaining about the food packs. We're all eating the same sludge. Together, they turned the dead planet into something more than exile. It became home. Briggs discovered traces of underground water using repurposed seismic gear. Sergeant Holt figured out how to grow protein algae in a decompression tank. Carter, the youngest of the group, somehow turned 2 drone cores into a surveillance system that mapped the terrain for kilometers. Fort Stubborn expanded. Tunnels, workshops, a comms dish scavenged from wreckage and aimed at deep space frequencies. They didn't broadcast for help. They were listening. Then came the bodies. It started with a crash. A ship not of Earth origin, sleek, angular, black as obsidian, and humming with a low tone that made the teeth itch. It came down hard on the northern ridge, near a cliff they hadn't mapped yet. Briggs didn't send scouts. He went himself. The wreckage was fresh. Smoke drifted from the impact site. Scorch marks and melted alloys hinted at a ship that hadn't failed due to malfunction. It had been shot down. Inside, they found 4 aliens, all dead, not from the crash, from weapons fire, precision shots, human shots. Briggs squatted beside one of the corpses, long-limbed and blue-skinned with armor that shimmered like oil in the sun. "Someone beat us to the welcoming party?" he muttered. Then he saw the flag. Painted across the hall was an emblem, a jagged-toothed maw wrapped around a burning star. The Zarn Dominion, known for 2 things, conquering outer systems and publicly liquefying diplomats. "That's not good," Carter said from behind him. Briggs agreed. But what caught his attention more than the flag was the small metallic beacon tucked in the corner of the cargo bay, blinking red, active, broadcasting. He carried it back to Fort Stubborn and dropped it on the table. They were tracking something, or someone. Holt stared at it like it might explode. "You think we're the target?" Briggs didn't answer. He just started planning. By the start of month 4, Fort Stubborn was no longer just a shelter. It was a fortress. They used the terrain to their advantage, setting up choke points, fallback tunnels, and a decoy structure built entirely to explode on impact. The satellite dish was repurposed to scramble local comms, just in case something came listening again. And it did. The next Zarn ship didn't crash. It landed, on purpose. 12 kilometers out. 3 hours later, they advanced. Briggs waited until the last possible second before opening fire. They'd preloaded makeshift mortars with compressed gas canisters and shrapnel, the kind of ugly, improvised weaponry that humans had always been known for when resources ran low and desperation ran high. The effect was devastating. The Zarn didn't expect resistance. They expected exiles, crushed, broken men. What they got were specialists, soldiers, engineers turned warriors. Every man on that ridge had nothing to lose and a planet to defend. By the time the sun rose the next rotation, the Zarn were gone. Not fleeing, just gone. Bodies burned in a pit near the crater where they'd first landed. Briggs stood over them, silent, no speeches. Just a flag he'd stitched from rations, cloth, and solar sail fragments. The Terran emblem in the center. He planted it into the ground near the smoking ruin of the Zarn ship. "This place has a name now," he said. "They'll find out soon enough." And they did. A week later, another drop pod arrived. Not from Earth, not from the Zarn, from someone else entirely. This one didn't carry weapons. It carried a message. Briggs opened the hatch and stared down at the blinking screen. A symbol flashed once, twice, then formed words in Terran Standard. "To the commander of the outpost on Dead Planet 471, we wish to talk." Briggs looked up at the sky. He didn't smile, just motioned to Carter. "Get the scrambler running again. No one talks until we find out who's listening." Because if there was one thing Exile had taught them, it was this. Dead planets don't stay quiet for long, especially not ones with humans on them. The pod didn't move. It just sat there, humming faintly, like a breathing thing made of steel. Briggs didn't approach it right away. He'd seen enough traps during his deployments, some with explosives, others with spores, and once with a talking cube that mimicked voices from dead crewmen. That one still haunted his sleep. Instead, he ordered Carter to run a full-spectrum scan. The results showed nothing hazardous. No radiation, no pathogens, not even a proximity sensor. Just that message still blinking like it hadn't noticed the dead Zarn parts scattered all over the valley. The men gathered in the command shelter as dusk fell. The wind screamed outside, dragging dust against the metal walls like claws scratching a coffin. "What do you think?" Holt asked, sipping something hot from a cracked thermal mug. Briggs leaned forward and tapped the table. "It's not Zarn, that much is clear." "Could be bait," Carter said, nodding at the satellite uplink. "We broadcast noise, maybe someone got curious. Maybe someone else hates the Zarn as much as we do." That earned a few grunts of agreement. The fire from the last battle had barely gone out. The smell of burned alien armor still clung to the bunkers. No one here was in the mood to trust anyone or anything. Briggs stared at the screen until the message looped again. Not aggressive, not threatening, just a request. "We wish to talk," so he answered. Using a battered comm array patched together with a cooking coil, 2 flight recorders, and half a spork, Briggs sent a short burst. "Identify yourself. State your purpose. No games." Then they waited. The response came 3 hours later, at midnight. "We are the Volcran, observers, not combatants. We monitored the Zarn approach and expected a massacre. What we witnessed was correction." That last word hung in the bunker like smoke. Correction. Not victory, not defense. Correction. Like they'd fixed a mistake in the universe. "Observers my foot," Holt muttered. "No one just watches the Zarn unless they're planning to make a move after the smoke clears." Briggs agreed, though he kept it to himself. Every species with a pulse had a motive. The only question was whether it involved territory, trade routes, or the slow bleed of control over nearby systems. This planet, officially dead, unofficially full of defiant Earthborn outcasts, wasn't just a rock anymore. It had value, strategic, symbolic, maybe even personal. "We respond to what we observe," the next message said. "We wish to assist your kind in resisting further incursion." Carter raised an eyebrow. "Resist with what?" They dropped off a pod in compliments. "Could be a test," Briggs said. "They're watching how we act, whether we beg for help or spit in their food." So they didn't reply. For 3 days they kept quiet, fixed their perimeter, cleared debris, buried their dead. Not that they had many. Only one man had fallen, Sergeant Dell, caught in the blast of a Zarn plasma bolt. They buried him under the hill overlooking the crater and carved his name into the flagpole. On the 4th day, another pod arrived, smaller. This one opened automatically, revealing a cube the size of a helmet, floating gently and projecting a low hum that adjusted itself to match human ear frequencies. It spun once, then began to speak in clear, slow Terran. "We are not here to rule or claim. We are here because we believe in retaliation." The cube paused as if waiting for permission to go on. It didn't get it, but continued anyway. "The Zarn destroyed 123 civilizations in the last cycle. They will not stop. They recognize power. You showed them a taste of consequence. We wish to multiply it." The men looked at Briggs. He looked at the cube. "Define multiply," he said aloud. The cube answered. "Supplies, weapons, coordinates of hidden Zarn staging zones, and discretion. You remain in command." That last part caught him off guard. Carter stepped forward. "They want to make you a warlord, boss." "Or a puppet," Holt added. Briggs said nothing. Over the next week, the Volcran delivered crates. No tech newer than 50 cycles old, but all functional. Magnetic rifles, shock mines, ionized blades, and even a portable forge that made field repairs faster than anything they'd had during their service. The men were cautious at first, inspecting everything for sabotage, but it checked out. Fort Stubborn became something else. They reinforced the cliff face and mounted rail turrets. Holt designed a trench maze system around the southern plateau. Carter integrated Volcran sensors into the old Earth drones and gave them names like Nibbler and Sarkastabot. Briggs spent hours each night reading the coordinates the cube shared, maps of space lanes, troop concentrations, refueling sites. The message was simple: hit the Zarn before they hit anyone else. But even now he hesitated. They weren't pirates. They weren't mercenaries. They were soldiers who'd been cast aside for doing what was right, not what was clean. Becoming hunters felt close to the line. Then the ship came. No warning, no message, no emblem. Just a massive triangle blotting out the stars, descending slow and quiet over the northern ridge. Not Zarn, not Volcran. Something else. Something human. The Terran Defense Command insignia shimmered across the hull. Carter nearly dropped his scanner. "Is that Earth?" Briggs stared up, then reached for his rifle. "Number, that's not Earth. That's judgment." The ship didn't open fire. It simply hovered, casting a cold shadow over Fort Stubborn. A signal followed. "Director, targeted. Commander Briggs, you and your unit are hereby ordered to stand down. You are in violation of Article 47C, unauthorized militarization of an exile zone. You will comply immediately." Briggs didn't reply. He walked to the edge of the platform, stared up at the ship, then turned back to the others. "We built this place," he said. "We fought for it, bled for it. No one gave us a flag. We raised one." "They're scared," Carter said quietly, "of what we did, of what we might still do." "They should be," Holt muttered. The Volcran cube activated again. "Do you wish us to interfere?" it asked. Briggs didn't answer. Not yet. He looked out at the dunes, the wind, the crater, the graves, the ramparts built by men with no future but plenty of memory. And he waited. Because if Earth had finally noticed what they built here, then they weren't just a problem anymore. They were a precedent. Briggs didn't flinch when the Terran ship dropped its altitude, kicking up a dust storm that swallowed half the northern sky. The wind screamed through the canyons, but the shadow from the cruiser stayed still, unmoving, unyielding. It wasn't a diplomatic vessel or a supply barge. It was a dreadnought-class enforcer, designed for siege, built for compliance, sent to silence problems, the kind Earth wanted forgotten. The next transmission was shorter. "You have 30 minutes to power down all systems and prepare for retrieval. Any resistance will be treated as hostile." Briggs exhaled slowly and looked at the cube hovering beside him. "Still offering to interfere?" The Volcran didn't repeat the question. It didn't need to. Instead, it pulsed blue, then green, then settled into a still amber hue. Waiting. Offering. He turned to Carter. Shut down the uplink. I don't want them listening to what we decide. Carter nodded. Already scrambled. We're invisible again. The others gathered around. Holt, Reyes, Garo, Lennox, 12 in all, some leaning on weapons, others with tools still smeared with grease from reinforcing the southern wall. They looked at Briggs the way they had since the first week, like they already knew what he was going to say, but were still ready to follow him wherever it led. I don't want war with Earth, Briggs said, but we're not going back. Silence. No trial, no review, no reintegration, just chains and cages. They didn't come to negotiate. They came to erase. Holt stepped forward. Then we dig in. We can't win against a dreadnought, Carter said, glancing at the skies. Not with these weapons, not with 12 guys in sandbags. Not head-on, Briggs agreed, but they're not here for a fight. They're here to make a statement. If we take that away from them, they don't know what to do next. The cube pulsed again, as if in approval. Briggs looked at the group. We hit first, not to destroy them, to remind them who we are. They moved fast. Within 15 minutes, Carter reprogrammed the Vulcan drone network to mimic multiple heat signatures across the crater. Reyes planted decoys, old helmets, damaged armor pieces, and heat packs along the southern ridge to simulate troop movement. Lennox, the best mechanic among them, turned the fusion core of the broken food recycler into a proximity flare with enough electromagnetic discharge to scramble targeting systems. Holt armed the mines. Briggs called it out. They're expecting scared exiles in a bunker. Let's give them 12 ghosts in a storm. The first strike hit just before the deadline. Not theirs. A sonic burst from the dreadnought shook the ground, flattening the northern watchtower. The message was clear: surrender or be crushed. Briggs didn't flinch. He tapped the comms. You think you're reminding us who's in charge? He said, voice steady. But you sent this ship because you already know you're not. The dreadnought fired again, this time not at them, but over their heads, carving a trench into the plateau with heat so intense it melted stone. Then the Vulcan acted. From the crater, a pulse of white light surged upward. The cube projected a beam that shattered in midair, releasing a haze of ionized particles. The dreadnought's systems flickered, lights dimmed, its stabilizers stuttered. One of its side panels blew open with a cascade of sparks. Then came the second strike, this time from Fort Stubborn. Holt's rail turret, powered beyond spec, let loose a shot straight into the exposed panel. It didn't breach the core, but it did enough damage to scare them. The ship rose sharply, thrusters roaring. They weren't expecting resistance from an exile zone. They definitely weren't expecting coordination, technology, and a message broadcast in clear Terran standard across every known channel. This is Outpost 471. We are not exiles. We are human. The dreadnought pulled back, just like that. No announcement, no reply. It hovered for another minute, then drifted higher and higher until it broke orbit and vanished. Briggs watched it go, then turned back to the others. It's not over, Carter said, wiping his brow. No, Briggs agreed. Now it's just started. Weeks passed. They didn't hear from Earth, not directly, but ships stopped coming. No more drop pods, no more messages. What they did receive was quieter and louder in its own way. Encrypted pings, once a day, random locations, outposts, mining stations, deep space listening posts, no messages, just signals. At first they didn't respond. Then one day, Carter cracked one. It wasn't just a ping, it was a question. Is it real? Briggs answered the same way he'd started this whole mess. It is now. That was when the requests came. Quiet ones. Whispers through deep space relays. A pilot on the run, a technician blacklisted for protecting his crew, a demolitions expert whose last target had been a corrupt governor's yacht. They arrived one by one, never announced, never expected. The outpost grew. Fort Stubborn became Haven 471. By month 9, they had 37 men, 2 defense platforms, a shuttle run to a nearby asteroid belt for resources, a motto engraved into the northern wall, "No flag but our own." Briggs stood at the edge of the overlook, gazing across the valley. The land had changed. Trenches grown over with moss, steel towers rising from where there'd once been slag, even grass pushing through the ash in places. "Message came through again," Carter said behind him. "Another exile. From Eridani. He's asking if this is the place." Briggs nodded. "Tell him it is." Carter paused. "Think Earth will try again?" "They already did," Briggs said. "That dreadnought wasn't their first try. Just the last time they tried it loud." "And the Zarn?" Briggs shrugged. "If they come back, they'll find more than 12. He looked up. A satellite they launched 2 weeks ago blinked red in the night. Someone had answered the latest ping. 2 someones, maybe more. Carter said, "You know, for a place they called dead." Briggs nodded. "We sure made it loud."